All right, guys, thank you so much and welcome. This is Stephan Piscano with the Stephan Piscano podcast, and I'm grateful to be joined by the great Gerald Glassford, who is the founder and content creator for Lakers Fast Break. We had him on the show a couple months back, right around the NBA trade deadline, and really enjoyed that discussion. And kind enough to join me again here to talk a little bit about the NBA MVP race that we've got shaping up and see what we think between the two of us that our Lakers can do in the playoff. For those of you that are not familiar with his channel, again, I couldn't recommend, if you're a Lakers fan or if you're a fan of sports in general, Lakers Fast Break to me is the best platform to get smart Lakers content and evaluations. And then Gerald does a lot of other things through YouTube and other podcast platforms with Pop Culture Cosmos. So highly recommend you checking that out as well. But Gerald, thank you for joining me again, my friend.
It's great to be back. Thank you for allowing me to come back on.
Well, good deal. Well, so last time you were here, we were arguing about Rob Pelinka, and before we got on here, I just decided, and we kind of mutually agreed to just let that go. So today it's all going to be sunshine and rainbows and hugs. And I really wanted to get your take. I mean, I've heard on your show a little bit of your thoughts on this MVP race that we've got shaping up here. And from some of the content that I've posted on my platform and just in the chat on your streams, I've become of the mindset that it's just bizarre that Luka Doncic is not only the MVP favorite, but to me, when I really look at the data and the history, I think he should be a prohibited favorite, similar to how SGA has been all season long. But what's your thoughts on how the race is shaping up as we come down the home stretch here of the season? We've got about 7-8 games left. Do you see it as a 4-player race? Do you think it's locked up for SGA?
Yeah, studying the national reporters, the national media out there for quite some time, as I do, I know that virtually all of them base their votes on narratives. What is the best narrative for the entire season? And for the Lakers, it hasn't always been a good narrative because, you and I were talking around the time you and I were talking, the Lakers were not in the same elevated position that they are now. They were actually at one point in time only a game in front of the Phoenix Suns. Now, as we talk now, several weeks later, it's a completely different story. Luka has been on the rise. He had one of the best scoring months in NBA history in the month of March, 600 points. Absolutely fantastic performance from him. And, if I would agree with JJ, he's had probably the best first and the best third acts of this season. But what has taken place over the second act of the season, I think that's where people go ahead and maybe distance themselves or choose in another direction per se. I know that with SGA, it's his consistency as far as continual 20-point games. Obviously, he has that record now. He passed Wilt Chamberlain record, one of those almost untouchable records that you didn't think was going to be. Yeah, it is. So he deserves credit for that. How he gets those points, you and I could go ahead and talk about that all day long as far as the foul merchant part of it. Does he push off? Does he not? He lives off the free throw line. We can't go too far on that because Luka Doncic and Austin Reeves.
Yeah, Luka leads the league in free throw attempts.
Yes, exactly. And still argues and gets a lot of technicals because he doesn't get all the calls he wants. And same thing for Austin Reeves. Why is Austin Reeves being even considered for a max contract this summer? It's because he too has a style of play where he goes hunting for fouls. So I can't argue too much against SGA. When I was approached by one of my followers from Germany that constantly asks questions and comments and things of that nature.
It's not Nick T, is it?
No, it's Pinty. Big shout out to Pinty. I haven't seen Nick T actually in about a week or so.
He's ashamed because Luka's playing so well. He can't.
Yeah, I think that's the case. So watch him come out of the woodworks if Luka starts to go awry. But that usually happens for our channel. But Pinty was saying as far as for the narrative for SGA and all that is, again, they're quite like you. He has Luka as his MVP. But if I have to take a step back, I understand how this league votes, and this how this league votes on constantly is on a narrative with the fact that, again, they have been out in front all season long. They have not had many dips. Their dip was like just for a short period of time, and they were still the number 2 team in the league behind, at that time, a rising Detroit Pistons team with a much easier schedule in the East. So they have been virtually out in front with the best record virtually in the entire season, followed closely behind by Victor Wembanyama, who in some cases has a just as good argument, and some cases has a worse argument because he hasn't played the minutes. I know the great meme that has been passed around in the past few days is that he has several hundred minutes less than 41-year-old LeBron James
I saw that too,
in playing out there. So, I mean, but what he does in his time there, as far as how he changes the numbers, I mean, the plus minus, if you're a big believer in that, he is second in the league to SGA, and he has, again, hundreds of less minutes than SGA does. So, I mean, the narrative and the fact that they've been also playing and exceeding everyone's expectations. I mean, I interviewed one of the media members for San Antonio leading into the season, and not even she had it above us, but not even she had that this level was where San Antonio's at. So the narrative for him is strong. I think that it will come down to the final games. I think it will come down to whether or not OKC clinches the West. I think for some people, I think for even if they don't win the West, I still think a lot of people are going to, as far as the media will pick SGA. So it's an exercise, I think, in futility. No matter, I've seen your voting, I've seen your top 5, and I've seen, other people's top 5 as far as Laker related, and we think with our hearts sometimes, and I understand that, but there was that dip where, he got injured. There was also the fact that it's just the team itself wasn't performing at a level. It just seemed like he was going out there and getting his, and the other rest of the team just wasn't supporting him to that level. It was when everybody bought in. LeBron bought in, Austin bought in, and the rest of the team was able to be utilized a little bit better. And also JJ finally figured out ways and schemes to go ahead and implement defensively to get this team on by. That really changed the outlook for this team. And once it started to rise, people started taking notice of Luka's game once again. So again, I just think at this point in time, the narratives, they always base on narratives. And the narrative, I think, is just too strong for SGA at this point. I don't like it personally, but I guess we got to deal with it. And even if Wemby's team passes SGA's team, I really think that still those national media members are going to be stubborn in their way. I think
sadly,
that's why
sadly, I think you're right. I think I think you said it perfectly. I think it's an exercise in futility, which is really sad to me. And just to kind of, I guess, slightly counter a little bit of what you said there, but it's really in the same vein, because I agree with the ultimate outcome for the reasons you just said 100%.
I'm in Vegas, Stefan. I mean, we already know that the odds are like huge already into SGA, and those guys usually know something. And or have a great feeling about it, and they're not budging right now. And even as close as the race is between first and second in the West, it's still not changing.
Yeah, well, and that's kind of my problem, though. I mean, I know that's all true. It's all factual. But my two, I guess, counterpoints to the whole situation, not really to you, but to the whole situation is, number one, I didn't think Luka was the MVP a month and a half ago or a month ago either. But to your point, it was that dark stretch, which was, I don't even know if it was a full month ago. It was just really the end of February, beginning of March, when, like you said, it was a completely different narrative.
When they were fading, they were down to 6th place, and they were only a game in front of the Phoenix Suns in the Pacific Division.
Yeah, I mean, and just the media jumped on that. There was that 1 week, and I put it in some of my little videos and my shorts and all that, but there was that 1 week and a half where everybody just hammered Luka. And they were talking about him not even being first team All NBA, and should the Lakers trade him and all this nonsense. And what really made me wake up myself and be like, wow, this guy is the MVP if it was a fair driven world, is how he responded to that. I like the narrative of when everybody turns their back on you and it looks like it's done, and he responds to that with now 12-1 record in the last 13 games, 40 points a game. Like you said, him and Michael Jordan are now the only two players in NBA history to score 600 or more points in the month of March in a season, which that was wild that Wilt Chamberlain never did that, right? But anyway.
And the thing is with the 600 points, and the highest, by the way, was Michael Jordan. When he was averaging 50 points a game, how many games were they playing in a month? So that, I mean...
Makes you wonder.
But that was for the month of March. So maybe Wilt never had a month of March like this, but I don't know. Where were their seasons played and how many games were played within a month within those seasons? I'd love to find that out.
And it's wild too, because Luka got suspended for that one game too, so he could have had another 40 points in the month of March. But
this is true.
Well, and then the second, kind of along those same lines, to your point about the narrative and the season long, my problem with SGA, and I feel bad saying this, the media to me, a lot of the times decides at the beginning of the year, this is our guy. And then they build that narrative in the first month of the season, like this year when the Thunder were 24-2 or whatever it was. And then the remainder of the year, the 70, 60, 80% remainder of the season just becomes about them backing up the narrative they set back in November and December. And I don't think that's right, because the expectations, if you look back at around Christmas time, the expectations for the Thunder were they were for sure going to break the 73 win record. A lot of people were saying 75, 76 wins was realistic, and they're going to end up a great team, but they're going to end up in the mid 60s. So I see that as a colossal underachievement based on what their expectations were.
Absolutely. And again, the narratives, they've spoken out because, like you said, it seemed like it was almost preordained as long as OKC kept themselves at a high level. And they got up to such a great start, as you remember. And, SGA was a great part of that. And like I said, their dip in their schedule prompted Detroit to move ahead of them briefly, but even then, people still were not swaying their vote away from SGA. And again, we don't have to like it as Lakers fans. I'm just telling you at this point, it just looks more and more like that the narrative is being written for someone else, even though we feel that Luka should be given every opportunity to go ahead and be thought of in that realm as a MVP candidate, as an MVP top 3 candidate. And even that is in question because, there are also some diehard Nikola Jokic fans as well. Well, it's so hard, though, when you have a season like, why was Russell Westbrook for a 6th place team given, he was given the MVP for a 6th place team because he was one of the first in a while to get a triple-double. And then you see Nikola Jokic do this like it's nothing. And then right now, even with the injury, even though he has not played as well since coming back from the injury, you look at his video game like numbers and they're better than Russell Westbrook's ever was.
Oh, yeah.
That's the problem.
Leading the league in rebounding and assist at the same time.
And he shoots much more efficiently than Russell Westbrook. So it's even crazier than that.
Yeah. No, you're right. It's really, I guess it's sad to me because I feel like we could be having, and we still are, I guess we're doing it right now, but we could be having as fans and people that really care about the league, just the most fun legitimate four-horse race. Because like you said, I could see the case for SGA. I could definitely see the case for Wemby. I think if you did it the way they used to vote for the narrative in the 90s, where you really, how much value do you add to your team and how much did you exceed expectations all season long? And then all the people like Michael Wilbon that want to say, well, don't talk to me about players that don't play defense, even though he voted for James Harden for MVP. But anyway.
Same thing with Rachel Nichols as well.
Oh, I haven't heard that. Okay, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Just look that up because she, in recent days, on her podcast for Sports Illustrated, made that same paraphrasing almost word for word as what Michael Wilbon said. And people, all they have to do is in fact, it is on Twitter. You can actually see where she had stated previously back during the James Harden for MVP that she voted for James Harden as well, even though she indicated now that she doesn't she wouldn't consider Luka Doncic because he doesn't play or hasn't committed to defense the entire year,
Yeah,
in her opinion.
yeah. Well, and meanwhile, Luka's, I mean, actually, I haven't checked in a couple games, but he was, and he probably still is, leading the NBA in steals since the All-Star break. And, I think, as far as his physical capabilities, I think he's exceeded expectations on defense too. But if defense is so important, then Wemby is the MVP. I mean, if that's really half of the importance, he's historically impactful on defense in a way that none of these other 4 players are. So it's either they care about it or they don't. But it's just, that's what I don't like about it. They create the narrative to back up whatever their ultimate outcome is going to be. Give me, if you can, if Gerald Glassford was the one voter that decided all this, can I get your top 5 from him as of right now?
Again, for me, I think it comes down to how they line up in the Western Conference. If the Lakers fade to a 4th place finish, that might change some things. If OKC changes to a 2nd place finish, that would change for me. But I think I'm just going to go the easy route right now and go SGA, Wemby, Luka, and Nikola Jokic right there, based on where they are at in the Western Conference. I know that may be a cop out to some, but again, it's something where if you can look at it from that perspective and just base it off of not only how well they're playing, because all 4, like you said, it's a very close race, and each of them has statistically or analytically, an advantage on the other 3. So where does it come down to? Team winning. So what could be the tiebreaker between those 4, Stefan? Team winning. So if you base it off of team winning, I'm just going to choose that route right now, because those 4, I think, are so evenly matched right now. I think it's much closer than what the national reporters are indicating to their consumers at this time.
And I agree. I mean, and I think, even though to me, it's Luka. I really believe that, not just because.
And I wouldn't argue a bit with you on that if that's the case. Yeah.
Well, but you think
that, and you have every right to go ahead and think so, and he's every bit deserving as well.
Yeah, well, and I feel the same way about the other 3 candidates too. Like if somebody wanted to make the case for me for SGA or Jokic or Wemby, you got an argument. That's why it should be so fun. It's kind of in a way too. In part, it has to at least be to some extent, because the numbers in this era where defense is kind of an afterthought for the whole league and the rules have been changed and the pace is so fast and all that, the numbers are so dramatic compared to what they would have been 10, 20, 30 years ago that you have 4 players with historic seasons like this. Even somebody like Jaylen Brown, who we haven't even talked about, I heard a stat the other day, he's averaging 28, 7, and 5. And the list of players that have had a season in NBA history averaging 28, 7, and 5, it's like 16 guys.
I think he's a clear number 5 at this point, in my opinion. But again, I think even in the smallest amount, having Jason Tatum back detracts a little bit from what he's done. But he still managed to go ahead and obviously achieve some great things. And credit to him, because Boston, again, a great narrative, because they have exceeded tremendously that what a lot of people, including myself, as far as expected. I expected to be a 500 team and nothing more, and they have certainly exceeded those expectations. San Antonio, the same thing. The Lakers, to an extent, as well. I mean, most of our crew, our panelists, had the Lakers 4th, 5th, or 6th in the Western, or 3rd, 4th, or 5th in the Western Conference. And for many of us, this is a step up from what they were doing.
Well, when you were on my show in January, February, I think we were talking about our expectations at the beginning of the season, and at that time we're about a 50-win pace, and it looks like we're going to be in that 54 to 56 range if we stay hot.
Yes, so, yeah, I agree. But it is much improved. The team looks healthier going into the postseason. Hopefully they can get some rest for the big 3 as far as in the last couple games. Again, they look a little bit better shape. They can utilize, even though the bench is not reliable offensively as far as scoring, as the fact that they are one of the worst scoring benches in the entire NBA. I still think they at least have.
You're just dying to mention Rob. I can see it. You're just
no. You're, I wasn't actually going to mention Rob. I just said I was going to mention only the fact that JJ does have some resources, whereas last year they were still one of the worst benches in the NBA. In fact, I think they were the worst bench in the NBA. And JJ, as we know, hated the bench so much he didn't even utilize them in a second half of a game. So
Yeah.
I think now with Rui off the bench, Luke Kennard, if you get him involved, don't have him doing cardio, because you either get him involved or he's doing cardio. You got to get him involved and get him shots. Jake LaRavia, at least his activity level, he had a great performance last night, but that's the first time this calendar year that we could really say he had a standout performance
Yeah.
this calendar year. So if he can continue to build confidence from that, and of course Jackson Hayes, who has played exceptionally.
He's been fun to watch. He's one of the bright spots for me. Yeah.
Yes, and there's not a pressure for him to start like there was at the end of last season. Now, if the defenses in the playoffs, as they did last year in the playoffs, tighten up because teams just were going to go ahead and say, okay, shoot from three, shoot from distance. We're going to dare you to do so because we're going to tighten up and not give you those lobs. That's going to be a problem for the Lakers. That's going to take away a little bit of their arsenal, but I feel they're a little bit more equipped this year to handle certain situations than they were last season.
Well, and transitioning into that, so right now, obviously, we're the 3 seed. It's known the little box of teams that are all going to play each other between us, the Rockets, the Wolves, and the Nuggets. What team would you like to see us face in the first round? Who do you think we match up with best?
It's interesting because, everybody has said, let's go ahead and feast on Houston. Let's hope we get Houston in the matchup because we played so well against them in Houston, took 2 from them. They've struggled a little bit since when the Lakers rose. Guess who was the one that took a fall? It was the Houston Rockets. And they still have glaring issues as far as a ball handler, and also the loss of Steven Adams should not be underestimated as well, because he does so much for them on the offensive rebounding edge, which is still a problem for the Lakers, is other teams' offensive rebounding on them. And I think right now you would probably say Houston, but Minnesota just incurred a big problem, because if Jaden McDaniels' knee still does not get right, then in a first round matchup with the Lakers, the key defender on Luka you've just taken out. Although Ayo Dosunmu has done a great job for them, and I really wish Rob would have looked his way as well during the trade set, because he's really killed it for Minnesota. And he is a good defender, but he just doesn't have the size that a Jaden McDaniels does. And if Jaden McDaniels can't go out there, it might make it a little bit easier for the Lakers as well. But I'm going to say, of the two, Houston, from what we've obviously seen, has been the better matchup. And I think Edwards versus Durant, I would probably be more scared of Edwards because of what he can do still to this day on the defensive end if he decides to lock in.
Yeah, I agree. I tend to, I guess I still have PTSD from last year too, because they just dismantled us so badly. And this is a very different team. And even Luka's mindset's totally different. And physically, I think he's in a different place. But still, the remnants of last year's destruction haunts me. So I'd like to stay away from the Wolves too. How far do you think that we can go in the playoffs? Do you have any expectation beyond?
That seems to be the $1 million question, Stefan, for us Lakers fans. And if it depends what Laker team we get. If we get the team that we saw in that 9-game win streak, this team can go a long way. This team can go to a Western Conference Finals and give either San Antonio, well, actually it would be OKC, give OKC a run for their money. I don't know what the outcome would be 100%, but I definitely would tell you that they would not roll over if they are playing like they are playing right now. And that is the key as we head into these key OKC matchups coming up here at the end of the season here tomorrow and next week. it is very interesting to see. Although I don't expect either team to show all their cards, it will still be nice to see what they can do. And without Marcus Smart in the mix, he is going to be a key when they go at it, if they go at it in a second round of the playoffs they're in. So again, they could go all the way. They could go all the way to a
You
finals.
really think so? Okay, yeah,
That's a
good.
possibility. I know that I have not said that at all this season, but if they
No,
play like they played in that 9-game winning streak, there is a possibility if everything goes right, they could get to the finals. Because again, if they go by OKC in the second round, no, actually, no, they would play San Antonio. If they get by San Antonio in the second round, OKC gets roughed up by Denver per se
hmm
for in a 7-game series, and they get off a split the first 2 games in OKC. It could be anyone's guess. But again, they have to play at a level that they've been playing in that during that 9-game win streak, which they're still playing at this time.
yeah. I mean, and like we talked about, Luka averaging 40 points a game over his last 13 games. If it was any other player currently playing, I would say it's likely he's going to slow down. But historically, he performs better in the playoffs than he does in the regular season. So I could see it being possible to where he does continue that elite pace.
Well, he's going to have to, because he's got to shed the critics. Because the critics that say, okay, what is he going to do when it comes down to the money time, and they often lead to his performance in the finals, especially on the defensive end,
Yeah.
quite constantly. And again, he's not going to shut up the critics until he gets it done. And while this team isn't the most ideal team that you fit around Luka, it's still a team, again, that we've seen that can win a lot of games. And again, if everything goes right, who knows what will happen?
Yeah. I'll tell you this, you just made me think too, with those 2 games we've got against the Thunder, those 2 games could be the only thing that might actually give a realistic shot at reshaping the MVP race too. I don't think this is going to happen, but if it did happen to where we came in and destroyed them in those 2 games, which again, I highly doubt that's going to happen, but if it did, that could be the only thing that would actually shift the MVP either to Wemby or to Luka, because those 2 games could be enough to push the Spurs into the 1 seed for Wemby to have a better shot. Or if Luka, I think he would have to get 50 plus in both games, and SGA would have to have 18, which again, like you said, hasn't happened in like 2 years. But if that happened, our guy might have a shot.
A lot of things would have to go right. Even if Luka dominated SGA, there's so many. I mean, you just go and listen to the Hoop Collective, and those 3 guys are voters there. And I just don't hear, even with Tim McMahon, who is the biggest of the Luka supporters, because you would be too if you wrote a book on him.
Yeah.
But even he, I don't see would clear his way through, and he has been the highest on Luka in the MVP voting. I just see them and the other national shows. I just don't see them clearing the way for a Luka over SGA, even if he dominates the next 2 games. I see that.
That would probably benefit Wemby just as much.
That's what it would do. That's what it would do. Because then you're talking about San Antonio as number 1 in the West, and Wemby's still getting his video game numbers while Luka and SGA are beating itself up. Now, would it solidify Luka above Jokic at 3? I think that's what it would do. I think that's what it would do more, instead of vaulting him into number 1 status, as much as we would like to say. And that might actually, though, give him some number 1 votes. I just don't think, when you're talking about 200, 300 voters, or however many voters that there are for the MVP, I just don't see, even that overcoming all those biases that those voters would have.
Well, I'll tell you this. Last thing I'll say on that. If the narrative I've heard the whole season and last season is the reason he's such a prohibitive favorite, SGA, is it's the best player on the best team. If he's not on the best team anymore, then that narrative doesn't, you can't say, well, he's getting it because he's the best player on the best team, and then they're the number 2 seed and give him the award. So I think if they somehow slip that far, which again to me would be a historic collapse from where they were in December, I think it's got to be somebody else. Whether that's Luka or not, I don't know, but it's got to be somebody other than him.
They won't do it. I don't want to get fans hope. I don't want to get their hopes up too high. because again, I think that if anybody has a shot to pass him, it's Wemby. But that would be again, Luka would have to dominate SGA in both those games, and then Wemby would just have to go, or get injured or just throw out some duds. And it's really hard for a guy 7'6" to throw out more than one dud in a row. Yeah.
He is amazing. He's my favorite non-Laker player to watch. I mean, like a lot of millions of others, but he's something else.
He is something else. Again, I saw him when he first came here to Henderson, a suburb of Las Vegas, and played with his French team against the G League Ignite. And that was just great to see. And you could see what the brilliance of what he would become. And yeah, you can't argue with that.
A final comment and then a final question for you, my friend, since I guess we've got 3 minutes here. My idea to fix the MVP so that this narrative stuff that we're talking about doesn't continue to happen with traditional media is that we give a percentage of the votes. We have a third of the votes come from the traditional media sources like it has, a third come from the players, which I understand the problems historically that came with that back in the day in the 70s, and then a third come from YouTubers like yourself. Like my guy Scap. I think if we did that, because I think you guys who are really, mainstream YouTubers with this, you care enough to be knowledgeable, but you also represent the voice of the knowledgeable fan. You can't give the votes to the fans because then you have idiots, voting for Yao Ming every year for the All-Star game like that. But if you guys did it and you represented us, I think that makes sense. Your thoughts?
I would welcome it. I would treat it with respect because again, it's like all things in human, as far as human decision making. Once you do it so many years, you kind of take it for granted. I mean, look what Dan Le Batard did with this Hall of Fame ballot at one point in time, and that's infamous there. But I would treat it with the respect it deserves and try to look at it in as unbiased a fashion as I possibly could to try and pick what I believe would be the best winner, wherever they come from, the Lakers or someone else. But I would treat it with the respect it deserves. And I would welcome it. Absolutely.
Good deal, my friend. Well, I would ramble at you more, I would, but any closing thoughts for our Lakers as we come down the home stretch?
I didn't believe at all this season that they would be getting to the point where to see a pathway. But if everything goes right, I'm just going to say the Lakers have a fighting chance, and that's something that I didn't think that they would have at any time this year.
May it be so, brother. All right.
So as well.
He is Gerald Glassford with Lakers Fast Break. Check it out, guys, wherever you get your podcast, YouTube, and all other fun things. And my friend, thank you for hopping on with me and doing this.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure. I look forward to hopefully hopping on again if you allow me to.
Yeah, you got to have me on I want to do an observations.
Absolutely, but you got to get that camera going.
I know. I can't even figure out. I keep hitting the upgrade on my Zoom. I can't even figure that out. So I
can't observe a V now, can we?
That's true. All right, buddy. Have a good night.
To you as well. Thank you.